All right. Moving right along. We're inspired today. We're moving today. We're making a lot of content today, and that's good. That's real good. So I will be sporadically posting or putting on this playlist. This playlist, Brujo Ryan Teaches Magic and Witchcraft, is a course, okay? And I will be sporadically putting videos in this playlist that I think are going to be important by people who can explain things to you better than I can, like Dr. Tracy Marks talking about some mental and behavioral health issues, because your mental health matters whenever you're doing all of this stuff, okay, in the occult. Right now, we're going to take it back and we're going to talk about how to organize yourself. This is very, very important. You need to, like I said before in one of my other videos, you need to buy a journal now. The Witch's Book of Shadows or the Magician's Grimoire is a very important part of being in the occult world. It's a way of scheduling yourself for your practices, you know, like knowing astrological transits or knowing when the full moon is coming around or any kind of other celestial phenomena that you're trying to grab a hold of, like eclipses, things like that, if you're into astrology. Also, on my channel, you will see that there is a whole bunch of playlists about Vedic astrology, and there are free courses, like by Ryan Kurzak, who does like an entire course for free, like this, in astrology, that you can learn more about astrology. I use a bullet journal. A bullet journal is this, okay? It's just a small journal, but it actually is a dotted journal. It does not have lines in it. Trying to give you an example. Okay. There's no lines. It's just dotted. Okay. And given that it's dotted, a dotted notebook, it actually gives you a lot of freedom. It gives you a lot of freedom. So as you can see, I have not only written down shit in this book, but I've also written or drawn up diagrams, charts. See, these are an example of like my studies in astrology. So I recommend that you get a bullet journal because it's a really great way, a blank journal, in order to write down astrological transits, your schedule, goals, names of spirits. Make it a dream journal if you want to, have multiple sections in it. Maybe some is for dreams, some is for spell work, ingredients that you want to use. If you decide that you're going to start practicing magic, and let's say you're going to be doing research online or in books or on YouTube, and you find like a very simple, let's say, protection magic spell with certain herbs, certain candle to be performed at a certain period of time, facing certain directions, if it's ceremonial, we're going to get into that, then you're going to want to write down the date that you actually performed that ceremony or that ritual. You want to write down everything that you did, and you want to write down what materials were used. And then what you're going to want to do is come back at a later time and also write down whether or not it was successful or unsuccessful. Because magic and witchcraft is an art and a science. It is an art because it is a craft. You know, it requires you to do things, sing, dance, chant, make dolls or puppets. Crafting also has to do with like making herbal medicine, like making salves and balms and synergies of like oils and essential oils, recipes. You know, you write down your recipes in here, tinctures or tonics that you make. There's so much to learn. There's so much to learn in Magick that it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling how grand this universe is and how grand the magical world is, and the occult world is. And you are going to forget shit if you don't write it down. So I'm going to recommend that you bullet journal, and the next video, or 2 or 3 videos in this playlist, are going to show you some guys that have created a bullet journal, and as an example, so you can get more detail, you know, so you can see what they do. Maybe they'll give you better suggestions than me. The next thing that you want to do is you want to decide exactly where you want to practice. So you might have a basement that you can convert into your magical area, or it could be a closet. Okay, if you don't have a lot of space and you want to like set up a tiny little altar inside of a closet, something that you can close the door, you know, as long as you light a candle and don't burn your house down, you know, you can do it in something as small as a closet. You might decide you want to do it on your patio or your porch, or you want to do it in your backyard. You might even designate or decide that there's a specific place in nature that you want to go. In my traditions, we go out into nature often. We will go to specific locations depending on what kind of magic we want to practice. If I want to work with the lakes, the rivers, the wells, the springs, the fresh waters, then I will go to a lake. If I want to go down to the graveyard or the cemetery to work with graveyard and cemetery spirits, if I want to go out into the forest to work with fairies or work with the green man, or you get the idea. You might decide that actual casting of magic is something better done outside of the home and not inside your home. Just putting that out there. And also make that place, if it's in your home, make it a place that you're also going to study and read and learn, listen to music and meditate. So you want to start creating like an energy field around the area in which you are going to be practicing magic and doing things. You know, the more psychic energy that builds up in a particular area, the more prayers, the more songs, the more dances that are sung, incense, and the entire vibe that you're going to feel if you choose to make one of these rooms in your home your magic room. It's going to start to embody, okay, the energy that you're invoking. Let's say that you're a young person. Let's say that you are at home. You're still living with your parents. Maybe you're a teenager and you don't have the ability to practice magic or learn about any of these things or call spirits in any place other than your room. We will talk about that and be more specific about that. If you're young, let me go ahead and put this out there. If you're a child, I don't know how old you are. If you have YouTube and you're like 10, 12, 13 years old and you're watching these videos, then yay, you're learning how to practice magic very, very young. You have the opportunity to learn shit that I didn't learn, okay? If you're a young person, it's probably best that the kind of magic that you do in your room has to do with healing and protection, calling on ancestor spirits and spirit guides. Those are the spirits of the dead that are around you and your guardian angel, your protecting spirits, working with them intimately inside the home. And if you want to spell cast or do something else, do it outside of the home. Any kind of negative or baneful working or destructive magic, you should do outside of your house, okay? And you're going to learn how to do those things because I'm going to teach you all of these things. We need to talk about the science of magic, because I just told you that magic is an art and a science. The science part comes from we actually believe in science. Like magicians and witches actually believe in science, okay? Witches were some of the first, were the first herbalists. You know, someone asked me one time on TikTok, they said, where did witchcraft come from? Or when was witchcraft invented? Or when did the religion start? I said, when the first woman or female person on this planet discovered medicinal herbs that would ease her menstrual cramps, or found healing plants that were able to heal wounds on warriors, okay? Traditional herbalist, plant-based medicine. That was the first witch. The first witch that was able to figure out that if I use these herbs in these combinations, I will get specific results, was the first witch. And that's why witches have always been feared throughout all of history, because witches have always been wise women who had a knowledge of medicinal and poisonous plants. As an example, some woman had a husband or had a partner that was abusive, sexually abusing her or her children, or beating her, or was a rapist or some other kind of horrible person. She could go out and find the witch, and that witch might have some kind of herb or some kind of toxic plant that she could like totally yeet her partner or her husband out of existence just by using toxic plants. You see, that's why witches were feared. Witches also performed abortions, because you can perform an abortion using plants, herbs. And I don't know if you've heard of Witchfoot, but Witchfoot, her name is Jennifer in real life. She wrote a book called Fetus Deletus, How to Perform an Herbal Abortion, which is available on Amazon. So if you want to know how to get rid of a fetus using plants and herbs and teas, then you would go buy that book. So as you can see, that witchcraft has always been a very feminine art form. Although men have also become witches, witchcraft and magical herbalism and medicinal herbalism and traditional medicine has and mediumship has fallen into the realm of feminine things, and women have pioneered that occult practice since the beginning of time. Magicians and sorcerers and shamans have been people who have had the ability to go into trance, had the ability to communicate with the spiritual world, were responsible for petitioning gods and goddesses, acting as priests, and also had a very great knowledge of astronomy and astrology and paying attention to the seasons, and also agriculture and war. So we'll talk more about polarity, and we'll talk about masculine and feminine and everything in between. But for the most part, sorcery and magic has kind of fallen into the category of something that was more male-dominated. I think that men just tend to gravitate more towards scientific stuff, whereas women tend to gravitate more towards intuitive work, which is just fine. It's been like that for a very, very long time. So what do we use when we're practicing magic? We use the scientific method. The scientific method. So let's go over what the scientific method is, how it's taught to people in school in order to draw conclusions about what works and what doesn't work in the world of science. And since we're spellcasters and we're practicing the occult and magic, we're going to use the same kind of scientific method in order for us to cast our spells. So I have this written down, and I have to write shit down because I forget. But the series of steps to collect information to solve problems or resolve problems is, first you have to identify the problem, or you have to ask a question. There either has to be a problem that needs a resolution or a question that needs to be answered. That's first. The second one is you have to construct your hypothesis. You kind of have to sit and meditate on the circumstances or what it is that you want to do, how you want to try to resolve or find an answer to that question or resolve that problem. Then you have to perform an experiment. After you perform that experiment, you analyze the data. And after you analyze the data, you reach a conclusion. And if your hypothesis is supported, then you perform another experiment. If your hypothesis is unsupported, then you construct a new hypothesis. And this is the standard scientific method to try to figure out what is real and what is not real and what works and what doesn't work. So let's apply that scientific method to us as magicians and witches for spell casting. I would say that you identify a reason for casting your spell. Identify it. Why do I need to cast this spell? And before you decide to cast any spell at all, the first thing you need to do is practice divination to find out whether or not it's even worth casting a spell. So if someone comes to me and says, Ryan, Philip, I need a spell cast, I'll be like, okay, well, first I'm going to perform some kind of divination to find out whether or not that's a good idea to do that for you, okay? And that's a protection for you more than anything else. You go to your spiritual court, you go to your guardians, and you ask them, is this going to be supported? If I cast a spell, is this going to be supported by the spiritual world? They're either going to say yes or no. If they say yes, then you construct your hypothesis or you decide how you want to cast a spell. Is this something that requires healing? Is this something that you can use through medicinal herbalism, traditional herbalism with essential oils or some kind of balm? Or is this like a poppet you have to make? Is this an energy-related thing? Is this like a spirit that needs to be exorcised, either a demon or a spirit of the dead that's a problem? You understand what I'm talking about. So construct your hypothesis about what it is that you need to do to accomplish this goal. And then you do the spell. Boom, you do it. After you do the spell, you observe and you analyze and you see whether or not you get the results that you want. Now, I'm going to tell you something that other witches might not tell you. When you cast a spell, you should get the result that you want, that you intended for. If you cast a spell and you get something other than what you asked for, or you didn't get what you asked for, that was an unsuccessful spell. A spell is only successful if you get exactly what you cast a spell for, nothing else. Okay? So if you do not get exactly what it is that you wanted from casting that spell, you're going to have to cast again. So then you determine whether or not you need to cast again in order to get the result that you want. So now taking a little break, write all of this stuff down, watch the next video or two about bullet journaling, get yourself a journal, and start preparing yourself. We're just in the preparation stages for actually learning how to practice witchcraft and magic. There's a lot of setup that needs to happen. You need to decolonize your mind. You need to set up the proper workspace. You need to do the proper research. You need to start learning and continuing to follow this guidance and use the scientific method when you're getting ready to practice magic.